with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we're going to talk a lot today about the economy and some of the projections that are out there. And, but one thing that's pretty clear is nobody's talking about recession. Do you see how that kind of has left?
Didn't work.
The lexicon, right?
That game didn't work with the Democrats and the leftists too well at all. No. They don't talk about it.
Goldman Sachs is saying that the economy is essentially recession-proof, and it's this amazing run that we've had.
Jobs. I hate to sound like Revolution number 9. Jobs,
and it just keeps on roaring. But I mean, are there headwinds out there? I mean, right now we're kind of flipping the calendar. We're in a whole new decade, 2020. Great stuff. The teens are behind us. The teens are in the rear view mirror. And what does 2020 have in store for us? Well, it's got a very, very important election, amongst other things. And that election is going to come in about 10 and a half short months from now. And we're going to be talking about who is the next president of the United States.
Well, I think if we thought that 2019 was outrageous with all of the events that we saw with the fake news and the Russia collusion and then the Ukrainian collusion and then every collusion in the world and the porn star. I mean, you can't imagine what was thrown at Trump and what was going around in the news for the cycles for 2019. I think in 2020 it's going to be even crazier because it's going to get more intense as we approach November.
Well, talking about 2020, I just got to bring this up. I'm from Appalachia. My family's from Appalachia. My mother's from Appalachia. My father's from Appalachia. I know Appalachia. Spent a lot of time there. And it was really incredible when Hillary Clinton said, she's going to put all the coal miners out of business, right? Remember that one?
Yeah. Couldn't understand why she lost them.
On top of that, they were all deplorables. Well, we were all deplorables. But they're just going to put them out of business. They're just going to have to go find another line of work.
They don't count.
Right. But Biden is and she says that was the biggest mistake of her campaign.
Probably not a good idea to tell people they're going to go bankrupt.
Well, you had Western PA, you had Southern Ohio.
Kentucky.
You had, Kentucky, which is mostly Republican, and you had West Virginia, which historically has been very Democrat.
That's right.
All turn against the Democrats. But Biden now seems to really, even going further, he's saying now that coal miners, they're going to put them out of business, but the good news is they're all going to learn how to do computer code.
Of course.
He's not.
Neil, come on. Of course they will.
He doesn't know the coal miners that I know.
They're going to take a 40-year-old guy, 45-year-old guy who's been in the mines since they've been 20 and say, listen, I want you to sit down and here are the instructions. It's real simple. And there's an app that you could download to really learn it better at home.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Oh, my God.
He doesn't know Appalachia like I know.
He's had his deplorable moment.
It'll be funny to see how that one plays out. Hey, but let's talk about the economy. Let's talk about something very fundamentally important, which is interest rates and how interest rates are going to impact the economy and therefore impact our jobs. We're very pleased to bring on with us right now Greg McBride from Bankrate.com. Greg, welcome to Made in America.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
You too. And so, your projections is that interest rates are going to remain quite low, that the Fed isn't going to be increasing rates, and that inflation is going to stay at or even below 2%. I mean, that sounds all very good. I mean, sitting here in January, early January, that seems like a pretty good forecast for a strong, robust economy.
Yeah, I mean, by and large, yes. I do see inflation picking up a little bit in the back half of the year, but still at a level that the Federal Reserve is comfortable with. So they've set a very high bar when it comes to actually raising interest rates. I don't see that unfolding in 2020. I do see the economic expansion continuing at more or less the 2% rate of growth that we've seen for much of the expansion. So, it's an environment where unemployment's at a 50-year low. Inflation's low, or even if it increases, it's still at a very comfortable, reasonable level, and all of that bodes well for keeping interest rates low.
You know what I find interesting, gentlemen, is that even on and don't hit me, Neil, even on CNN, some of their commentaries are saying that the economy really is doing pretty good right now. There are some people on the left that are actually admitting and stating that the economy is it's doing pretty good at this moment, which I find to be astounding that they would do that.
But Rich, they'll also say it's because of Obama. I mean, because he's created
there
this
is
amazing,
that. They
this
do
amazing
say that.
run.
Well, because Trump inherited that. There's no question he did, didn't he?
So Greg, where has this economic success that we're experiencing right now? What is the genesis of this?
I think, a lot of things. If we go back to, the depths of the financial crisis, the economy, fell very sharply, very fast, and the rebound has been at a much more modest pace than we've seen in previous recoveries, but it's also been much more prolonged. I mean, this is the longest economic expansion, and right now, table is set for that to continue here in 2020. So you've got
where do you see unemployment? I mean, that's a number that we haven't yet talked about. President Trump really, has staked his future on a very low unemployment rate. And it's a huge contrast to the Obama years, whether you say that the economy started to kind of recover back in, say, 2011 or so, 2012, and we've had this long expansion. Okay, maybe it has. But unemployment, though, has stayed, as President Trump really impacted unemployment and has really brought that down.
Yeah, we kind of were figuring a couple of years ago that we were pretty close to full employment. And, the reality of it is we've continued to see job creation since. We've continued to see unemployment come down. We've continued to see the labor market get tighter. And that is translating into a faster pace of wage growth than we had seen for, certainly in the earlier stages of the economic expansion. So, as long as we get that virtuous circle going of low unemployment, consumers working and making more money, that bodes well for consumer spending, which is really the pillar that's holding up the U.S. economy.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, once again, first-time claims for unemployment this week were down to 220,000 from 225,000. We're looking good on that, and it's one of the lowest numbers in 4 weeks, so we're looking good at that. What I find interesting is that, think for a second. Here we had a week where, we attacked some of the other terrorists that the Iranians are supporting in Syria and northern Iraq. And the energy prices didn't go anywhere, did they? But in the past, had we had something like that, some upheaval, some attack, some negativity in the Mideast, the price of oil would go up because we were dependent upon importing oil. But it's not that way anymore. So I would think that the energy sector really is a very strong building block in the foundation of economy that we're talking about right now.
You'd have to talk to an equity analyst who specializes in that sector. Energy stocks, have lagged the market for the last several years, really ever since commodity prices collapsed back in 2015 or so. So there's a lot of different variables at play. There have been some calls, famously Peter Lynch being one, saying that energy is an attractive sector as we move into 2020. But again, that's a little afield of where I'm at.
So, but you did bring up something that kind of piqued my interest. Was you said right now that people are working and they're spending money because they're seeing their wages increase. That's one thing that we hear some debate in the market. Are wages actually increasing? What do you think?
Well, we polled Americans, and we found that about half of working Americans say that they got a pay increase last year. That's the best it's been since 2016. What we do see, though, is that increasingly those pay increases, they're not across the board cost of living increases, that they increasingly are, each year we see it more and more gravitating toward performance-based, those that have gotten promotions or taken on more job responsibilities. So, while the headline number says wages grew at 3.1% year over year, I think what our data is indicating is that the reality on the ground is much more like one person got 6% and the other didn't get anything.
Well, I'll tell you, as an employer of people, Rich, it's very hard to find people to work. I mean, the reason why wages are going up is because anybody who wants a job has a job. And if you're going to try to get somebody, you're going to have to make it very enticing. And that's why we're seeing our wages go up. It's just because of supply and demand. Good people are hard to find. Greg, good people are hard to find.
Yeah, I have yet to find an accountant or an engineer or a computer programmer who has trouble finding work. That's for sure.
And it's right across the economy. I mean, people operating machines, welders, plumbers, the trades, any sort of skilled labor, just anybody to show up for work, anybody who could pass a drug test. I mean, it's just hard to get people to come to work these days.
That's a good bar to have, isn't it?
Show up. Well, we are a drug-free environment, and we believe that's important. Anyway, Greg, we really appreciate you being on the show. I really appreciate you coming on. Greg McBride from Bankrate.com. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to continue the discussion. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, so that is true. I mean, we are a drug-free work environment, and I got to tell you, it's important. Why? You want everybody to come to work, with a clear mind.
Well,
That's
drooling is unacceptable in the workplace.
Working on, some of the high-tech machinery that could, chop your arm off if you're just
probably not
paying attention. Not a good idea. Yeah. But, it helps everybody in the company because healthcare costs go down as a result of having a drug-free work environment. I got to tell you, so for every employee that's here and has some sort of a share arrangement for having their families and their children and everybody on the healthcare plan that we have a very good healthcare plan. The cost for everybody, it goes down. So, it's just I think it's important as you're trying to control your costs. You want to pass on the best cost we possibly can for our employees, and we want to pass on the best deal we possibly can for our customers, and therefore keeping our costs under control. But a fascinating thing, and I was reading up on it. CBD oil. It's amazing if you see what's happening with that, right? I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And I was in the Florida Keys this past week, and driving down from Key Largo down to Isla Mirada, about a 30-40 mile a ride. 4 or 5 places, right on Overseas Highway, big signs, CBD oil. I mean, it's like everywhere. And it's funny because, I was reading up about it, and, the chemical within marijuana that creates the high is called THC.
Right? THC.
So CBD oil has no THC.
There's no high.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
There could be traces of THC in CBD oil.
This is where I was going to go with the question.
It is saying that,
yes,
before you take a drug test with your employer, please show them that you have this CBD oil, and there could be traces of THC in it, which could make you not pass a drug test. I thought that was pretty amazing.
Well,
but people are really jumping into this.
Let's ask a question. Are you in Illinois? Do you have a plant in Illinois?
I did, but I moved it to Georgia. I mean, if it was in Chicago,
we'll
actually.
Get a better chance.
So
we're
out of Illinois.
You're out of
Thank
Illinois.
God. Thank God.
So what happens if you're in one of the 11 states now? Illinois is the 11th state to legalize marijuana. So marijuana is legal in a number of states.
Yeah, but we have offices in California and manufacturing in California.
So how do you deal with that?
No, hey, we're a drug-free workforce.
So you cannot. If you want to work here, you cannot have any trace of a drug, including marijuana, in your bloodstream or your hair, depending on how you do it.
Exactly. I mean, that's the way it works. It doesn't mean that if you're in a
regardless
state
whether it's legal, it doesn't make any difference. We don't want that here.
That's right. I mean,
I think it's a very important statement.
Hey, there's legal prescription drugs, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you could abuse those drugs and still pass a drug test.
Well, what about Xanax? Some people take Xanax to mellow themselves out because they're crazy. They want to mellow out, and that's a legal drug, and they have a prescription for it.
So that's a good
careful.
point. I mean, my insurance company deals with all those issues, but from what I understand, a blood test, and a drug-free environment is a drug-free environment, and unless there's a prescription or a doctor's sort of a note
You're in trouble.
attached to it, it doesn't pass.
Right.
Just like in California, if you have THC in your blood system, it doesn't pass a drug test. So anyway, I thought that was pretty incredible. I thought it was pretty amazing what's happening with that whole industry. And
Well, the marijuana industry
and the type
is a
of jobs
growth,
that it's
literally,
creating,
industry.
and the type of jobs that it's creating, it's
Yeah.
incredible. And a lot of these, I was doing the research. A lot of them are in Colorado. It's all coming from Colorado. It looks like Colorado has really, jumped into this in a very big way.
Do you think it's a problem if you smoke up and then you get to the top of the mountain and ski down? Do you think they have any hit and runs as a result of that?
I don't know, but I got to tell you, these young guys that's on their snowboards zipping down the mountain as I'm trying to crisscross back and forth and just stay on my 2 feet there. They come zipping down the mountain, boy. I wouldn't want to have a collision with one of those.
No, exactly right. I mean, I find it interesting. But it is an amazing growth industry. I mean,
yes, amazing growth industry.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
So I wonder, someone's going to roll it up. I mean,
was that a play on words
roll
on
it
purpose?
Up. Oh, my goodness.
There you go. And now for another double entendre from Neil Asbury.
Rich has got his big bamboos out right now, and he's...
I don't smoke. I don't smoke. You know what I figured out? When there's a house on fire, everybody's running out. Why do I want to put smoke in my lungs? It doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I never embrace that. No, I don't smoke. I don't do that.
That's good. Hey, but by the way, there's gummy bears.
That's my wife told me. She was out in Colorado. She said it was like a cookie jar.
Hey, there's even gummy bears for your pets now.
Gummy bears for my pets.
Yeah.
That's what Bogart needs.
No, really, there's pet treats too. I mean, everybody's in on this action, Rich.
They have marijuana pet treats for your dogs?
Yes.
Well, they have catnip.
I got to tell you, man, everybody's jumping in on this. I mean, it's the wild, wild west.
Oh my God.
Hey, switch gears for a second.
I'm going to switch.
Amazing what's happening over in the UK. I mean, Boris really pulled it off, man. Everybody was saying, here's this sort of goofy, buffoonish sort of a dude. He has no game. I mean, look at the guy's hair. He's all disheveled and,
I don't get his hair. I have to tell you that. I'm trying to figure out where he's going with the hair. Is it Beatles? Is it almost Michael Caine from years ago? I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
Pretty amazing. Yep. But he pulled it off. God bless the guy. I mean,
he did a great job. Socialism down,
the UK,
conservatism up.
They got their liberal media bias as well. And talking about that, we have a great guest, Dan Gainor, coming on from the Media Research Center Newsbusters, who expose and combat liberal media bias. Very, very important. We're going to have a great conversation about this economy. Stick with us.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we still have a big, big show left. You want to stick with us? A lot more to talk about. And, Rich, one of the things that has amazed me is the resilience of our economy over the last several months. I mean, think about what's been going on in our country. Think about all the negativity, of the liberal media rooting for a recession. I mean, absolutely rooting for the economy to collapse?
Well, it started with Bill Maher. Bill Maher came out and actually said in one of his shows, you know what we need? We need a good recession. That's what we need. You want to beat Trump? We need a good recession. It'll be worth it. Here you go.
Well, that's
there's the
clear,
bar.
That's as clear as can be, right?
Yeah.
And so you got all that thing happening in the liberal media. I mean, just absolutely relentlessly beating up on the president, beating up on America, beating up on flyover country. I mean, just anybody who voted for Trump, they were, just a bunch of psychos. I mean, just relentless. And then we enter into this impeachment thing. And, wow, I mean, where has that gone and where's it going? Well, nobody knows, but you would think that would create a negative jolt to the economy. It hasn't done so, at least yet. You got this trade war with China, which is still raging on, by the way, although that they decided that they're going to have a little bit of a timeout here. The vast majority of what has happened between the United States and China is still yet unresolved. I mean, this is like not even close to
Well, it's only phase one.
Yeah, and phase one is light. I mean, it was like
it's China light.
It's like a cop-out because, no real issues were dealt with. And so so the headwinds, are out there for that. But yet this economy keeps roaring and roaring and roaring. So, what is up with that? And we just heard from Greg McBride from bankrate.com telling us that he thinks interest rates are going to remain low and just generally interest rates are not going to be a problem. Inflation is not going to be a problem. The economy is going to get a boost from that. So what is in store? I mean, is this thing, on this sort of razor's edge between success and collapse? Or are we on some really firm footing here that this economic expansion is going to continue to roar despite all of these things going on in our country, which in a normal economy, on a normal president, would totally knock them off their feet. But yet it just seems that there's a real positive attitude here in our country as it relates to our economy. We're very pleased to have on with us right now Dan Gainor, who is from the Media Research Center, Newsbusters, and they are every day exposing and combating liberal media bias, which is a huge job. It would take an army of people to do that. And Dan is there fighting for us. We really appreciate Dan, and Dan is with us right now. Dan, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, it might not take an army. It certainly takes a few platoons. That's for sure.
I don't know which direction you would be looking in because it's coming from like everywhere. It's like, every time. And I read the Washington Post. I read Politico. I don't read Huffington Post. I mean, I just can't take that. That's just too much for me. The New York Times. And I'm just waiting. And I go days before I'll read anything positive about our country, about our president, about our economy, about anything. There's just nothing that they want to say that's positive. I mean, that's absolutely insane. I mean, it's terrible. Dan, I'm sorry to have to bring that up, but I mean, how do you deal with it? I mean, how do you deal with that and still, have a sense of humor?
Well, you have to. I come from a first responder family. And I think you have to adopt kind of the gallows humor first responders use to kind of deal with it, and that's what I try to do. You got to make fun of it, because if you can't make fun of it, you can't enjoy your job. You have to try to be a happy warrior at least some of the time. I may not always manage that, but I try to do it. And certainly when you're doing stuff, you are doing, as my friend James refers to, we're doing the Lord's work. We're trying to get honesty in the media. I spent a long time in journalism, and I got very frustrated with it because, the ideas of honesty, truth, neutrality, and lack of bias are just not dominant like they once were, if they ever were in some cases. And so to look at that, to apply that to the economy, well, they have been doing everything. You guys are spot on talking about the Bill Maher report. Yeah, Bill Maher, who is not just a millionaire, not just a multimillionaire. His net worth is $100 million. He earns $10 million a year from HBO. And yet he wants a recession because he wants to teach America a lesson for voting for Donald Trump. So he wants people to lose their jobs, lose their cars, lose their homes, have their kids live on the street perhaps, or maybe not be able to feed them right, had to kick them out of school if they go to private school, etc. He wants Americans to suffer. And that's really been the attitude of a lot of the media. So every time there's a blip or anything in the economy, like we had last year, you have a big drop one day, well, they immediately start talking about the R word. Now, remember the key thing about the R word. They only like to talk about the R word when there's somebody in the White House who's got an R after his name.
Well, that's convenient to remember. The trainables will get that in a heartbeat. That's not a problem. That's good. But you know what? But you're 100% correct. I find it astounding. Let's go back to that point. Remember the week that they had the bond inversion? Bond inversion. All of a sudden, that went mainstream. Within about 30 minutes, every station in mainstream media, that is, with the exception of OAN and Fox News and others, were blasting out every correspondent. Bond inversion, must be a recession coming. Every recession had a bond inversion, but not every bond inversion had a recession. They left that part out. But within minutes, everybody was talking about bond inversion and recession. And it happened within 1 hour. Everybody was talking about it.
Yeah, nobody knows what it means. All the people talking about it don't know what it means. So let's talk about things people know what they mean. Let's talk about unemployment. For the longest time, because I've been involved in business media in some way or another, last 2 decades. Okay, for all that time, the general understanding used to be 5% unemployment was perfect unemployment. Could go lower, and then it did. Then 4.5% became perfect unemployment. Then 4%. Now we're down to 3.5%. And not only just general unemployment, but specifically minority groups, African Americans and Hispanics, who are often left behind in the economy under the Trump economy, are doing particularly well. And, the left is scared by these numbers. They're scared by that reality. They're scared that when you couple low African American unemployment with polling that has Trump's popularity in the 30s with the black community, and you realize that's 4 times higher than he did in the presidential election in 2016. So even if the poll is inflated by 100%, it would still be doubling of his support. Well, the Democratic Party is founded on getting a lot of minority votes. If they don't get all those votes, if those votes start switching parties, that's
Dan, let's take a quick break there. There's still a lot more to talk about. We got to get a quick break in here, and we'll be back in a moment. We're with Dan Gainor from the Media Research Center, talking a lot about what's going on in our media and how it impacts your economy and your jobs. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Dan Gainor from the Media Research Center Newsbusters. Newsbusters, just like the Ghostbusters. Got to go correct that liberal media bias, and there's so much of it going around. Dan, so tell us about the bias now in the politics of impeachment. And it's funny because, if you read the media, and I love reading, both the conservative and the liberal media, because it's like we're living in a totally different world. I mean, it's not like we're in the same universe. I mean, you're standing here, a couple of feet away from each other, and the worldview is so incredibly different. I mean, it's just like not even close. And you read the liberal media, and, everybody is absolutely nuts who can't see that Donald Trump has to be removed. He's out of here. And whatever crimes he did has risen so far above what any other president has ever even contemplated in talking with another foreign head of state that's about to get hundreds of millions of dollars of American money, and not, it's amazing that, we know this is going on with our leaders. It's been going on for decades. and somehow President Trump is guilty of doing what everybody else has done, is to bargain on behalf of the American people. That's what presidents are supposed to do, get us the best deal. Rich, I know you want to jump in on that.
And I want to get Dan's comment on this. And the thing that I heard with the impeachment, they said, well, why are you rushing? Why do you have to do this? As if they're waiting to get a table, at one of the restaurants in D.C. They're rushing. They said, well, we have to do this now to save democracy. We have to save the election. So we have to save the election and throw out a duly elected president so we can have a proper election coming up in 2020. That's an amazing statement, as if that became the truth. And it went everywhere. Dan, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, remember Nancy Pelosi's own words. She didn't want to do impeachment. She opposed it, and she was pressured by the most far-left elements we have in the country. And by that, I don't mean her standard supporters. I mean the media. The media wanted this impeachment. They pressured, they bullied, they cajoled, they wrote stories endlessly, pushed until the far left got on board, and they pushed. So now we're in the dead zone of impeachment, where they voted to impeach, but they refused to send the impeachment orders to the Senate because the Senate won't do what Nancy Pelosi wants them to do, which, because they don't have to, because she's not Speaker of the Senate, she's only Speaker of the House, and so she does not control things. And so technically he probably isn't fully impeached at this point. While they've had an impeachment, a vote, what you're by saying the House can impeach without the Senate is also saying that the Senate can then rule that Trump's innocent without the House ever even sending impeachment over to them. It's a sort of a two-part process, and she refused to go ahead. And she refused to go ahead because she knows it could either end quickly or end badly for her. Hunter Biden could be subpoenaed. Joe Biden could be subpoenaed. All sorts of uncomfortable things can happen, and they don't control the narrative in the Senate. So meanwhile, of course, if the Senate does hold hearings, every member of the Senate who's running for president has to attend, which means they can't be out there campaigning or fundraising. So it's a disaster for the left. So that's why they haven't moved ahead with it. But nevertheless, the only reason this is happening is because of the press. This would not have happened if the press were not so foursquare for impeachment. And that's so going into 2020, you can expect that they're going to keep pushing because that's, they're like Johnny One Note.
Yeah, but then what's likely to happen is that Trump is going to win, and he's going to win big. He's going to be an impeached president who actually gets reelected with a larger margin than he did when he first got elected. I really believe that's the most likely outcome of this. I really believe that. I mean, if just maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I believe. So how do they look in the mirror after that happens? I mean, at what point do they discover they are so out of step with the average everyday American like us?
Well, I mean, I don't think they ever admit it. I think that's why they've spent 3 years talking about Russian collusion and trying to imply that Russia, fixed the election. Russia has tried to involve itself in every American election since 1960. And don't take my word for that. Take the Washington Post. They're the ones who tell you that. So this is not new, but the amount of involvement Russia had via social media was tiny, and it was actually directed at both sides. They were simply trying to divide us. So who bought into dividing America? The left and the media. They're the ones who divide America. They're the ones who are doing Putin's bidding. And here we are, we're in the year of election. We're 11 months out to election, and they don't want to admit that, it's on them. So remember, you have to be, and here's the stat that anybody listening right now, remember this stat. You had to have been born in 1970 or earlier to have voted for a Republican president that the left accepted was legitimately elected. Because George W. Bush, they don't consider to be elected legitimately, and Donald Trump. So 3 different elections where Republicans won, they don't consider to be legitimate, and now they no longer consider Georgia or Florida elections to be legitimate. They simply, when they lose, they say they didn't lose. That's become their new narrative.
Deanna, great thoughts. We're going to have to get you back real soon, but unfortunately, we're out of time. Dan Gainor from the Media Research Center, Newsbusters. Keep on exposing and combating that liberal media bias, Dan. We need you. We need you. We need a lot of you, and especially in the run-up to this election here in 11 short months.
Sounds great, man. Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and everybody listening.
You too. Coming up, Dr. Ruffman and I have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, some final thoughts for the day. How do you see this first month of 2020 shaping up?
Well, it's interesting that the run that we're getting right now in the stock market, this very first week in the first decade, the second decade, has done very, very well. We're looking in the right direction, and we seem to be fairly optimistic about what's happening for this year. Now, that's the economy, and that's jobs and jobs and jobs. The question becomes, how do you, and we've been talking about it, how do you convert that to the politics of the jobs, which leads to the election that's coming up, and that's going to be the dominant play.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the economy, it's the economy. Remember James Carville, of Bill Clinton fame in 1992. It's the economy, stupid. And he took down an incredibly strong president. I mean, the whole thing with the first Iraq War, right? The coming down of the Berlin Wall. I mean, so many things happened in rapid succession with George H.W. Bush, President number 41. He had an incredible amount of wind be in his sails. I mean, going to re-election, right. He lost.
Yeah,
he lost because the economy had stuttered at the worst possible time for him.
He said, "Watch my lips, no new taxes."
Oh, that didn't help.
That didn't help.
Right.
That statement did not help him.
But that just shows how the economy, could take down an incredibly strong president, and how even a president that's gotten beaten up so relentlessly in the media, and how he's most likely going to get reelected despite all of the negativity that's going on in our mainstream media, because the economy is so strong. If it holds, and let me tell you, it doesn't say that it will hold. I mean, something could happen in the economy, and all of a sudden you see, some major sell-off. Who knows what could happen?
Well, remember, we said that this is going to be a very strange year.
Did everybody see the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy coming back in 2008?
No, they didn't see that.
But it came, and boy, was it rough. But right now, the telegraphing of the press and the media, at least on the economy, is interest rates, as we've heard today from Greg McBride from Bankrate.com. And we're reading it all at Goldman Sachs. We're reading it throughout the media that the economy is recession-proof. That's going to be a good year for the American worker. Wages are going to go up. But
getting back to Dan's conversation, the media could drive it. If the media, in fact, as you just said, was driving the impeachment process and making people want to have the impeachment process, then what happens in the media when they start talking about bond inversions again? When they start talking about the concept of recession, or jobs are going down, or the wages are not going up the way they say they are? If, in fact, the media can repackage that and market their agenda. And we're hearing that word all the time. It doesn't fit the agenda. It doesn't fit the agenda. But if it can fit their agenda and they can get out there their interpretation of reality, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. It's what's being fed 24/7 on the left side. And that can control an economy. Look what happened that 1 week when recession, bond inversion. The world was talking about what was happening and how we could have a recession. Never happened, did it? Never happened.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. But the perception, remember, go back to Marshall McLuhan. The perception in media is the reality that people know. So if, in fact, they create a false perception, it really doesn't matter what the real reality is, because that's not the reality that you live in.
You know, what I think is going to potentially turn that on its head is that if Bernie Sanders starts to become the apparent nominee, it'll be interesting to see what the liberal media will do with that. Because, you know, by a lot of the liberal media, you know, they are elitists. They want
Absolutely.
They want the elite wing of the Democrat Party to win, right? So that meant Hillary Clinton, and, well, she didn't win. And you had an insurgent Barack Obama, then a Donald Trump that took her down, right? Not according to script. And now you got a Joe Biden. And what happens if he goes down and it's Bernie? And I got to tell you, it'll be very fascinating to see how quickly the media turns on old Bernie. They don't like him. And they think he's going to lose. They think he's way out there. And it'll be amazing to see if they start turning on him in the same way that they turned on Trump. I don't know. But we're going to find out.
That's right. Well, all you have to do is sit back and watch.
Yes. Hey, Rich. Love to be with you. But unfortunately, we're out of time. But we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.